Yeah, man, I'm super excited to have you today. Can you just kind of get us started by telling us the story of Riley, how you got here, how you named the business? I'm very curious about that,
Oh
and
my gosh, I
what
love
you
that
expect in
question.
the future.
Absolutely. So, Riley was actually born out of a real, like, lived painful experience for me. So, I am a career product manager. I've been product manager at a bunch of different, like, gigantic companies. I got my start at Google. Was at Eventbrite, Etsy, NerdWallet, and even kind of more recently at kind of smaller startups. And so I've really always been in the like, how do we use technology to solve real user problem space? And I have an almost 3-year-old daughter. So about, like 3.5, 4 years ago, when my husband, who's also a product manager, he's director of product at a company called Doximity. Um, when we became pregnant, we almost were like joking. We were like, we're two product managers. Planning is our stock and trade. Like we know what we're doing here. We're going to product manage the heck out of pregnancy. And indeed we did. We bought all the things, read all the books, took all the courses. Like we would sit on our sofa at night and like joke to each other. We're like, we've got this. We're as prepared as two people could possibly be to have this baby. Like how hard could it be really? Like how hard could it be? And anybody who's a parent who's listening or watching is probably laughing because there's the real truth about having kids is that nothing can really prepare you for what the experience, especially of having your first child, is like. Because babies don't come with instruction manuals. And this seems like such an obvious thing that you feel like you understand before you have a baby, but like don't really understand until you have one, is that they cannot communicate with you. The only way they can communicate is just by crying and being angry. And for the first 6 weeks of their lives, they're not even really able to socially smile at you. Like so much of like living with a newborn is like this teeny tiny angry potato just scowling at you all day. And so it was kind of this, amazing, but really intense transition for us from, not being a parent to being a parent. And on top of all of that, that transition by itself is, one of the most meaningful and intense transitions that people will make in their lives. I had postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, which is totally chemical. It's a process that happens in your brain. And it's not something that I certainly planned for, that we necessarily expected. And it also, because this is just the way that it goes, it wasn't diagnosed for a while. And so I remember my daughter would be like 2 or 3 weeks old, not sleeping because newborns just don't sleep. And again, that's something that you think before you have one, and then you like really don't know until you experience what that's like. And I just remember like I would have these anxiety nightmares where I would dream, like have like a waking dream that I had fallen asleep while holding her and that I had dropped her off of our bed and that she had like rolled onto the ground. And my husband would describe like waking up, hearing me gasping for air, looking for her on the floor, when in actuality, she was actually sleeping safely in her bassinet. And like after having these nightmares, would like spend all this time looking at her being like, are you okay? Am I okay? Like, what do I do? Is this ever going to get better? Is this ever going to get easier? She made a weird sound. What do I do about this? And the only like solace, the only recourse that I had in those moments, because everybody that I would have called for advice, like my parents or friends or like our pediatrician, everybody's asleep because nobody else has a newborn because it's 3 a.m. I went to Google, or I went to, books, courses that I had taken, and was just like desperately searching for help and answers, being like, what do I do? And just really very quickly found it an exercise in extreme frustration. Um, the internet, I also very quickly learned, this is also probably not surprising to anybody who's listening who's a parent, the internet is so full of armchair experts and what I like to call anecdata, which is so like intensely frustrating when you're like, I just need to know what I need to do in order to like get through this moment. And you have all sorts of people being like, well, I didn't vaccinate my kids and they went to Harvard. So like you do the math, and you're like, that's not how that works. That's not how anything works. And so I remember again, kind of sitting on the edge of my bed and talking to my husband and being like, it's so hard to get good answers and like get good information about like, all right, what actually matters in preventing SIDS, in like feeding our child, and like when is she going to sleep, and like what's the right approach. Like I know that data exists. I'm like, again, I'm a product manager. I've looked into this. Like I know that this is available. It should not be this hard to find. And like also it shouldn't be this difficult for me to figure out like what actually applies to our family. Like I really just wish that I had a fairy that lived on my shoulder that like knew what the science said and also knew us and could be like, oh, for your kid, here's what this is. Or like, hey, based on who you and your husband are as people and like the parenting values that you have, like here's what you should do next. And that was like the initial kind of like light bulb that very slowly, it wasn't like an immediate like, oh, I should build this. It was like a very slowly it turned on around, oh, this is something that I desperately need. And I can't be the only one who feels this way. And so over time, my daughter got older. She started sleeping better. It made all the difference. I ended up, again, like I Frankenstein together a sleep plan for her based on like 6 different books and courses that I took. And I remember the whole time I was doing it being like, I shouldn't have to do this. Like something should be able to know what the like right approach is for me and just tell me, which is again, like another little slow, like turning on of the light bulb. Um, we started to get our feet underneath us a little bit more as parents. We started to really understand like, all right, here's what this is. And I was kind of amazed to discover that the volume of questions that I had didn't really decrease. It just changed. So it kind of went from, oh my gosh, am I going to be okay? Is she going to be okay? Like, is this ever going to get better? To, all right, how do we start solids? What is that whole process like? Or like, oh, what should we be doing? Like, how should we be like making sure that we're doing things that like stimulate her developmentally and like meet her where she is in her developmental stage? And so it was really this kind of like feeling of, oh, I feel like I want to know something and like I'm always searching for answers that are really like shouldn't be so hard to find, but are so hard to find. Why is this so hard? And then in the meantime, I actually went to work for a different parent tech company where I was leading the growth product org. So I was really leading into like growth product management and speaking to so many different families all the time. And really, like, again, that was really the point where I was like, oh gosh, this is really not just a me problem. This is such a universal, every parent of young kids is having this experience of like seeking answers, seeking like the proactive and reactive support. And there is nothing here. And I really think, and this is also like right around the time that ChatGPT was like really taking off as a consumer product. And so it was like starting to actually tinker around like coding with ChatGPT and like coding with LLMs. And I was like, oh, I actually think that the real like superpower here that I'm really excited about is that I think that this is something that can marry a lot of diverse data points at scale and like actually achieve what I like to call like hyper personalization at scale. And that's something that like really unlocks this ability to provide great support, great answers. Like, and again, backed by science, like the science that we know we have about what does and does not matter. Like all of those things can come together to provide me the information that I need. And so it really was like this like kind of long journey, and I actually didn't even start Riley until my daughter was like 13 or 14 months old, but back like last November. And it was like, oh, I'm not, if I don't build this, I don't think that anybody's going to build this because the parenting tech space is kind of a tech desert. There are tools, but they're all very focused on babies. It's focused on very like the kind of transactional, like baby tracking. There's really not a lot of great tech that's built for parents. And like, I don't think anybody's really thinking about this space. If I don't do it, I don't think it's going to be done. And like, I desperately want this. Like, if I'm the only user of this product, I want it to be built. And so that's how Riley came to be. That's like the long meandering story of how this all happened.
No, that's great. And I think you kind of touched on it a bit in that story, but I'm curious as to your thoughts as to sort of the role of technology in the parenting space. So I think there's some part of like the lizard brain that's like, no, like you don't need technology, like just get family and friends, and like you just kind of raise this community. But that's just so not realistic today. So is technology like sort of filling in that role that maybe other people would have?
I love this question, Brady. And I think, the other question kind of similar that I'm asked sometimes about this is like, oh, is this like, are you worried that people are going to be like outsourcing their parenting by doing this? And the way that I always like to respond to that is I'm like, you wouldn't say that Googling for answers or reading a book or taking a course is outsourcing parenting. What you're doing is you're getting advice, like you're getting information that allow you to make really good decisions for your family. It's the same thing with family and friends. And with Riley, like our main goal is not to replace a human relationship. We do not want to replace your pediatrician caregiver relationship. We do not want to replace the relationship that you have with your friends, your family. And all of that is still an incredibly important and meaningful part of being a parent, even though we're all more isolated than ever. I still call my mom like every day. And I'm like, hey, she bonked her head. What should I do? Even if I'm also talking to Riley, because that's such a just like an innate part of how I relate to my mother. And what Riley provides is essentially an augmentation to a lot of those conversations where like you get really good information. And so like instead of being like, oh my God, I'm so out of my depth, what do I do? She like fell and hit her head. I can say, well, okay, Riley told me to do this. like, what do you think to my pediatrician? And my pediatrician, who's aware of this and very, supportive, he's like my biggest champion on the like data back side of this. They're always like, yep, great advice. Like that's exactly right. And so it's basically a way to have really great empowered conversations and also to, take the lower level pieces too, where I'm like, all right, it's raining here in San Francisco. And like, I don't really want to go outside and deal with my daughter in the rain and like everything being wet. Like, what are some fun things that are not screen time that I can do with her inside? And like, that's the kind of thing where, again, I could ask a friend about that, but it's also like, I might as well, like the alternative is I could just like Google it and like, this is just going to tell me. And not only that, it's going to know exactly the types of things that we like to do, the types of things that she's liked in the past. So, and it also knows that she has like a sensory sand bin. So it's like, hey, yeah, set up some things in her sensory sand bin and see if she does something with that or do a pillow for it. And so, long answer to your short question. And I really do see this as being a way to really ease the mental load more than anything and like take the burden off of parents, but especially moms who tend to just carry a lot of this in their own brains and a lot of especially the anxiety of like, oh gosh, what should I do next? Like really start to ease that and help you just spend more joyful time with your kids because that's all we want at the end of the day.
Yeah. And so as you're sort of going through this process, how are you guys thinking about customer acquisition? Because I mean, like half the planet's a parent. And like in theory, every parent wants to be a better parent. I mean, not all, most parents want to be better parents. So, I mean, in theory, it's like, oh yeah, like everyone should do something. So I'm curious as to how you're finding customers or what channels you've been most interested in, or you think there's kind of more potential for the future.
Oh my gosh. Another great question. And I think, for us in particular, this is very much a work in progress. And I think it always is. Marketing right now, it feels like it's changing every minute, every day.
Yeah,
And so,
so true.
It really is like the fastest evolving like area for us. Like things just change all the time. But we tend to think about it as actually kind of in two ways. The first one is, all right, what are parents, if they're not going to be searching on Riley, or if they don't know about Riley, what are they going to be doing instead? And like number one answers, well, they're going to go to Google. And so for us, one of our early, kind of bets that we made in user acquisition that's really starting to pay off for us is SEO, where it's like, if you're going to be searching for answers, we want to be the thing that you find. And we want to be able to get in front of you at that point and like provide value. Certainly, like we want to answer your question, but also in so doing, kind of show the value of like, oh, hey, also, this is something that you could just ask the app and it could like, again, instantaneously tell you exactly what you need to know rather than you being like, all right, here's what all this says. How do I think this applies? I'm so tired. I can't do that mental math. Like, what should I do? Like, we will help you do that. And so that's been a really effective channel for us. And it's continuing to grow pretty quickly. There are other couple of things like paid media, I think is just like necessary evil. But even then, it's not even really, I don't really see it as an evil. It's just an interesting way to get in front of people. And the good news about parents is that we hang out in pretty predictable places online. And so things like Reddit ads, like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, like Meta tends to do pretty well here. And similar idea with like SEO, where like paid Google search tends to do pretty well for us. And it's a pretty good ROI, just given that like we have a pretty good sense on a like recurring basis, like what parents are searching for, what topics might be coming up for seasonality. So that's been a really great place for us. The places that are starting to emerge in user acquisition for us that may be specific to like the parenting audience, but I also kind of wonder if it's kind of more about the consumer AI audience than just parents is we've actually found a lot of success by investing early in our brand and our design and like seeing that as one of our core moats in the space. Where like having really excellent user experience and excellent design is like top priority for us. Our designer was like the first hire that I made, Riley. She and I used to work together at Etsy. She was the designer to like my PM team, which was just, and she's like the best user experience designer I've ever worked with. And I was like, please come work for me. And investing in the brand, but also investing in like thinking about brand advertising is something that like as a data product manager, I'm almost like allergic to. I feel very like, brand, like it's so hard to attribute and it's so, like not necessarily performative in the way that you would expect like a direct like meta campaign to be. I tend to find that that has actually been like a really excellent way to like drive like a differentiating point amongst again, the parenting app space, especially for babies where we technically currently are building, is a little bit crowded. And so just being able to say like, hey, this is really well designed. It's thoughtful. It's by parents for parents has been able to give us a real kind of leg up there.
Yeah, actually, an early conversation I had with the person who finds podcast guests for us, they found you and they told, I don't remember how the conversation was, but they're like, hey, you've got to check this person out. Like their website looks amazing.
Oh my gosh. That means so much to me. You have no idea. That's like we spent, and we're actually about to here in another couple of weeks, we have like another like little brand evolution, like a refresh coming live. And like I've been like I code a lot of the product myself, and I've been specifically coding a lot of the front end myself. And I'm like, I can't wait for everybody to see it because it looks so good.
Good. Well, I'm so excited. If you don't mind, I would love to dive down a little bit more into your marketing stuff, just because I'm super curious. So you
Absolutely.
mentioned running like Reddit ads.
Yeah.
I run marketing here at Churnkey. I have heard a lot of mixed results with Reddit ads. I've heard some people be like, I think probably the balance of the feedback I've heard has been like Reddit ads not worth it at all. I haven't tried it myself, so it's all hearsay. But what's been your experience as far as like ad platforms? Which ones are you seeing the most performance in? I must be transparent. So I've always seen pretty good results with Google ads.
Yep.
And then I've seen like some on and off success with LinkedIn or Meta. But Google's always been kind of my go-to. Haven't tried much other platforms like YouTube, Reddit, stuff like that. So curious as your thoughts.
This is another area where we are learning. So I feel like my answer today may be different than my answer tomorrow.
It totally will. So this is not a fair question. I get that.
But it's such a good one because this is like the challenge that we're all facing right now is like, where do you place your bets? And the way that we tend to see this is that like we see it kind of almost less as like individual platforms and more in terms of like, we know that we have to get in front of the same consumer like 6 or 7 times at least for them to like really feel confident making a purchase decision. And that math tends to work out to a couple of different efforts that are combined. So like we have, our Meta campaigns, which actually, again, in this really visual space, parenting Instagram, like parenting Facebook, or like just like well-known communities that are very, very built for like our audience specifically, like that can be a really great way for us to get in front of like the right people, or at least get the right message in front of the right person to start. But then we have to follow it up with retargeting. We then do Google ads. We basically have what's starting to be like a nicely built out flywheel of like, all right, how does somebody become aware of us? How do we then get back in front of them? How do we accelerate their purchase decision? And actually, one of the channels that I almost never hear talked about, but I think has been like kind of a sleeper hit for us, and also at a couple of previous companies that I've been at, has been email. Building up an email newsletter and then doing, even in consumer, like a nurture or a drip campaign to get somebody from like being aware and kind of interested enough to give you their email, but not so interested that they're buying your thing. Like being able to then do that and then really, really segment your email audience and then ultimately your customer audience by their like demographics, by the information that they're giving you, by the way that they're interacting with certain campaigns. That's another thing that I think it's going to be ripe for disruption in this AI age. And like, I'm excited to see a lot of movement there that we've already benefited from a little bit, where like we can like really, really refine down to like really minute details. Like, who is this person? Like, what do they care about? How can we understand their pain so we can like help them understand like, oh, this is how Riley solves pain that you're feeling, or this like fire that you're fighting in your house. And so email and like being like the customer like engagement platform stuff, I think has been a real like useful thing for us. And investing in building out our email newsletter list has been like not something I would have expected to be like a huge ROI channel for us, but like it has really been great. And it's also something that augments a lot of the rest of what we're doing. So if somebody's like at your website and they're again interested enough to want to learn more, but not so interested, it's so much easier to get back in front of them on an email than it is like through retargeting, because it's a place that is somewhat owned by you, right? And so, and like you can own the design, you can send them all kinds of like very in-depth content. Like there's a lot that you can do there. So email is great. Answering your initial question about Reddit ads, we've also
let's bring this back to Reddit, because that's what I want to know about.
This is another place too where like there are really specific and significant communities built around parenting on Reddit. And so I think this is another place where like we may have just gotten lucky with the Reddit presence that exists for parents. we've seen pretty good results. We're just starting this effort out, and so kind of results TBD, but cautiously encouraging or cautiously optimistic right now. But I've also been at places where like Reddit ads were just garbage. Like there was, even if there were pretty good communities, especially on like the more B2B tech side, and like you run Reddit ads, like that audience was like, I don't care, get this out of my face. And
Mhm.
I think that also speaks a little bit too to like when we're thinking about consumer AI in general, one of the things that we've really had to think about on a daily basis is the fact that like a lot of people will even ask me, they're like, hey, who do you consider a big competitor? Like, do you think that ChatGPT is a big competitor of yours? And I always am kind of like, well, no, not really, because ChatGPT is not super well adopted on a regular basis outside of very like tech savvy communities, very like tech centric places, even in the US. And so like often our competitor is like a pen and a piece of paper or like a book. And so like when we think about like the tech savviness of the community, they may be tech savvy, but there isn't a lot of tech for them in this space. And so we really have to like scale back the way that we talk about the tech and not be like, look at this incredible cutting edge, like amazing, like way that we're routing our LLM so that it does even better for you. It's like, no, we've just you now have the ability to like talk to Riley and it will talk back to you, which is something that's been around for a little while, especially in like ChatGPT and like Meta. And even so, our audience was like, wait, I can have a conversation and I don't have to use both of my hands to do it. And we were like, this blows your mind? Like, yay, but also, so
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question.
They obviously don't live in the Bay Area.
Oh my gosh. Well, and even the ones that do, like, I fall into this trap a little bit where, like, I am like on LLMs, especially like the generative LLMs, all day, every day. Like, Claude and ChatGPT are my pair programmer a lot of the time, and me Cursor all day long. And like, even then, I'm still like there's no great tech for me as a parent. Like the best tech that exists that's not Riley is like a 10-hour course on potty training. And it's like, I don't have time under the best of circumstances to watch 10 hours about this. And like what I want is for something like what we're building to like dose it out for me, to tell me exactly what I need to know, exactly what I need to do, and like make it so that I can fit it into my life and like personalize it to me. And the fact that like again, the idea of personalizing it and making it not a 10-hour course is like the next step up is kind of insane. But like that's like the kind of context that I live in this space.
And I think regarding this space, we've kind of already touched on this a bit, but I'm curious as to your thoughts of how you think AI is going to influence the parenting space.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, just go ahead.
You know, I'm actually really excited that I'm seeing more AI like coming to the fore a little bit in the space. There was another company actually that I really love and admire that launched their own chatbot, like a parenting data chatbot. And this is another thing that I got asked a lot about. They're like, people would be like, "Oh, is like, do you see this as like another entry?" And I'm like, this is actually a place where rising tide, like more things in AI in this space actually lifts all of the boats, because one of the biggest hurdles, but also like responsibilities that we have in AI in general, but also especially for parents, is that like there is a really healthy amount of distrust. A lot of people, like when we do user research, a lot of people see AI as being faulty. A lot of what the words that they'll use to describe it is like hallucinations, untrustworthy, a little bit like gimmicky is what we tend to hear. And like that really does create an uphill battle when you're creating a product that is based on data that is, we work with pediatricians and like licensed clinical social workers, like real clinicians who are experts in the space to put together the data and a lot of the product that we build. And like, it's so important to us, and especially to like those of us who are building Riley, who are parents, who are also users, that like the data is incredibly secure, that the answers are incredibly high fidelity. And like when you're the biggest, like perception of AI in the space is like, oh, I don't know if I can trust it. It creates a real mountain of how are we going to like really tell the story of why you can trust this? Like how we've very thoughtfully built it in a way that isn't like so abstract that like your average person like won't understand it. Like how can we like help you feel really confident like that actually no, this is a very, very trustworthy tool and that we have a lot of skin in the game as users ourselves to make it that way. It's the same thing with like the data privacy element. That's something that I actually wish I saw a lot more of in the consumer and just AI space in general. This is such a wild west for data, and like LLMs run on data. And for the most part, I wish I saw more companies coming out and being like, your data privacy matters to us. What happens to your data matters to us. And like, we're going to be like, we all really have, again, this responsibility to do right by our users, by our consumers, so that we're not storing the data in a way that could be accessed like in a way that we don't want, that we're making everything as private as possible, that we're not training LLMs on like actual user data. Like I think that there's so much there, and like we're trying to lead a lot of that charge again, because I, as the parent user here, like I'm telling Riley things about my daughter all day long, and like that it's very important to me that that information stays very private to me. And so like being able to like really kind of tell that story, it's just exciting to me to see more people coming on and starting to talk more about like how this can actually be a huge like daily life improvement. And I think that there's a space for a lot more. There's so much more that we want to do that we're kind of holding back on, because the first and kind of most important step is just get everybody comfortable with the idea that this is an incredibly powerful and safe and like high fidelity, high trust tool that can like really, it's like meaningfully improve my life in ways that are even difficult to articulate at this point. Like there's some things that we talk about, like parts of our parenting lexicon, things that we say to our daughter that came to from Riley that like just are part of our parenting now. Like it's really so positively impacted me and a lot of our users. Like that's the core story, and like that's what we want to be telling. And so once we get past the hump of like, oh, this is something that is really incredible and it's an incredible tool, I'm excited to be like, and then look at this incredible, amazing, like update lifestyle upgrade that we have for you now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So if anyone's watched the show before, they know that if anyone is skeptical of AI, it is this guy right here. I've been very unimpressed with a lot of AI use cases that have emerged. However, I think that this sort of data analyzation, like personalization of advice, is an area where AI really stands to be very powerful. Because I think this is just something that does far better than humans. Like you can just look at a massive amount of data.
Well, and think about like the power even too, and like you're right, where it is so much more capable than a human at scale, certainly, and like able to better personalize in a minute way at scale. But then like when you add the human in the loop, that's where the real power is to me too. Like that's where a lot of our systems are built around. Like again, we actively review like anonymized like queries. We want to make sure that like the answers that are being provided are correct. We review those with pediatricians. We review our knowledge base. Like we are like really, really in the business of like making this as high quality and like high trust as we possibly can, as I mentioned. And so like, yeah, there's so much that like the personalization, and also like think about the use case of like the proactive advice, right? Like if you have like a newborn and you're like, how do you play with a newborn? They can't really do anything. And like there's so many hours of the day that you're just like, what do I do? and the internet's like, show them flashcards. And you're like, I can't keep showing them these flashcards. Like if you had something that told you in the morning, it's like, hey, it's day 14 with your baby. Like, here's what's going on with them developmentally. Like they can only really see high contrast. Something that could be fun is like take them on a walk and like let them look at shadows on the side of a building. Like that's something that Riley told my friend to do. My friend just had a baby a couple weeks ago. And it was like, look at like go out in San Mateo where you live and like look at like the changing, like have them look up at a tree when it's like sunny and like look at the changing pattern. And she was like, my baby stared at the tree for 2 hours. I was like, there you go. And so it's like both the reactive, like being able to like be there in the moment, but also anticipate and start to kind of think about based on what we know about like the relatively predictable developmental stages that children go through. And also like the challenges that parents will face, even though each family is unique, and controlling for the fact that each family is unique. What's something that we can say to Hannah that like makes her life in San Mateo easier versus like what's something that we can say to Amanda with her unique life in San Francisco that will make a difference to her today. That's like, it's like, what can we do to make a difference to you today? That's what I'm most excited about.
Very cool. I would love to hear about your experience being a founder in the tech space, being lady founder. Lady founders are awesome. You're kind of like full moons, like great, but don't happen that often. So what's been your experience? Have there been any like particular advantages or disadvantages that maybe people just don't realize And any advice you'd give to other female founders?
You know, I actually like I think about this a lot because I'm not just a female founder, I'm a solo female founder. So I don't have a co-founder. I am a founder, I'm the one. And that was against every bit of advice that I got, especially early on. Everybody, like even early investors that I was talking to, they're like, we are not interested until you get a co-founder. And I was like, why do I need a co-founder? And this kind of, I think it goes back to there's a real strength, I think, in having a real like unique insight into your product and your market that you're building. Like I'm a parent. I'm building for the parent that I was when my daughter was a baby. I'm building for the parent that I am now. I'm building for families all over the place. But like I'm in this, I'm in the trenches with these families too. And so like I have a pretty unique insight. Our head of engineering, who actually I met because we shared a nanny for 18 months. And it just like, it so happens that he's like one of the most brilliant like LLM operators I've ever met in my life. But like he's a dad. Our daughters are the same age. And having that insight is so powerful. And I think, beyond being like a woman, I think it's been really, really useful to be able to like put myself in the shoes of the user because I am a user, because I have been there, because I do know a lot of like what this takes. Just to be a parent. It's a very, very difficult and very important job. I think also, you know, being a product manager for such a long time was a huge help. And it's also why I think like a lot of people are told to get co-founders because you tend to specialize, right? Like you're either a business person or you're a tech person. And as a product manager, especially a technical product manager, I'm an everything person. I wrote actually a lot of the original code for Riley myself. And that also gave me a really great insight into like, oh, here's how this could work. Or like, oh, here's how we're going to make this thing route to this other thing. And like, here's the actual value that I want to deliver and how we can do it with tech. And I think that's something I'm starting to see more broadly, is that like, if you are a generalist, you are uniquely well positioned to do so many things really well, especially with the amazing technologies that we have. And that, like, this is kind of a crazy thing to say, but like being a parent and also a woman, I think like the ups and downs of having a startup and like being a founder, I think I'm better able to weather them. Like nothing phases me. Like I've been through postpartum depression. I've been through my child falling down a full flight of stairs. Like I have been through what I think are the worst moments of my life. And like I also have a really like lovely, rich life outside of work that keeps me really grounded. I have the most amazing partner. I have the most amazing daughter. And, that really helps me get perspective of like, what's this all for? Why are we doing this? And like, I feel like I am much less flappable. And like having a startup really is like up and down all day, every day. Like it's great, it's terrible, it's all the stuff. But like I feel like I'm really able to be grounded in like what matters. And like that is a superpower that I see for most of the women that I've ever worked with. It's like this real grounding and like what's the priority, what matters, like what do we need to do? And actually it's kind of goes against the stereotype where like I think everybody sees women as being like more emotional. Like I actually think it's the exact opposite. Women are so much steadier because we've been through some really, really hard stuff, especially if you're a woman founder who's like been through trying to fundraise as a female founder. And it's brutal. Like nothing can get to you. And like you develop just such a thick skin that it's like if you meet a female founder, like they are tough as nails. It's like just incredible. So and it's also a thing where like I talk to a lot of women, like prospective female founders, and I'm like, you are so much more capable than even you realize at this because like you are uniquely well positioned to like get through it because you are less discourageable. You are less flappable. You're less prone to like the ups and downs. And like there's no way to avoid it completely, but you're going to be in a great place.
And do you have any advice on, say, balancing the responsibilities of being a solo founder and quote unquote real life, like being a mom,
Yeah.
wife, so on?
Oh my gosh. This is also something that like the other parent founders in my network that I know and I talk about and laugh about all the time because I don't know what I did with my hours in the day before I became a parent. I think I would be like, oh, I'm going to take like a nice lunch or like, oh, I'll just get to that later tonight. And like the amazing thing about being a parent is that it's helped me in two key areas that I think are essential to being a founder. Number one, I'm so much more efficient with my time. Like I am like absolutely razor sharp. I have childcare from 8 to 6 every day. And I have to be as productive as humanly possible in those hours, because if I'm not, there's not a possibility that I'm going to get to it later. Like, there is no later. It is now. And so I'm like locked in. And I also have the benefit of I work from home and my daughter is here a lot. And so like I can bump out of a meeting and just like see her and spend just like a gorgeous minute with her. And like if I'm like in a funk, it will like lift me out of whatever funk I'm in. And like her 3-year-old joy where she's like, "Mommy, look, a dinosaur." And I'm like, "It's a dinosaur." Like that has also just been like, I don't know. I didn't really have anything like that before I had her. Like I had my husband and he's also very joyful, but there's just something really magical about like this person I created is showing me a dinosaur and it's the best thing. And so that's also been really great. And like the second thing that it's really helped me with is prioritization. Every parent that I know, because again, you just like you get there's so much that you're doing and carrying all the time with work and life and family and kid and all of that, that like it is so much easier to say no. And it's so much clearer to me what the priority needs to be, like the one priority, the one most important thing I need to get done every day, or that the team needs to get done every day, becomes so much clearer. Which isn't to say that it's like always clear all the time, or that there's never a discussion about this. But it's like, I think, especially earlier on in my PM career, I would spend a lot more time being like, well, is it this? Like, should I be focusing on this? Like, I don't know. And now I'm like, nah, we've got like 3 choices. I think it's this one. What do we think? And so the two of those things together mean that like, really like you end up being a superpower unto yourself. And it also means that like the time that I spend with my family, so like the pre-work and the post-work and the weekends are really sacred to me. And I really try to, construct my work life so that I can spend as much quality time with them when I have them as I can. And like, again, I'm also very lucky that like I also have a husband who also works, who also loves being a product manager. And like part of the way that we interact is like we love like jamming together side by side on the couch, like working on different things, but like talking about it. It's one of the things that we just love to do on a weekend while our daughter is sleeping. And so I'm very lucky, but it's been really great.
Well, amazing. Amanda, thank you so much. If people want to find out more about you, about Riley, where should they go?
Please head over to RileyApp.com. Again, we are about to launch a brand new experience there. So I'm very excited I know it's going to be lots of jazz hands all the time. Very, very, very excited to see everybody. Yep, RileyApp.com to learn more.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Brady. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.